Okay, Prof. Is the screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, I think we shall start for today. Good evening, everyone. I think the topic for today would be colonic transit study. Okay, so the indication for colonic transit study is mainly in evaluating colonic motility with CTS, colonic transit study in the short form. We can also assess the severity of the problem, and we can also assess response to therapy. There are a few ways and methods to assess colonic transit. The commonly used one would be the radiopaque markers. The other modalities include scintigraphy, tracking systems, and also MRI. So with regards to radiopaque markers, this concept started in 1969. And with radiopaque markers,
Wi-Fi. Di asal Wi-Fi tu. Tak putih tak tu bit tu.
with radiopaque markers, we are able to assess normal transit, slow transit, and also segmental transit times in patients with delayed colonic transit. Okay. So the pros of this system is quite simple, rather inexpensive, and it's quite reliable and reproducible. However, the cons includes we need good compliance from the patient. There's an element of radiation exposure, and it does not measure the transit of a physiological meal because we are only using markers, radiopaque markers. Okay, one second. Okay, there are two types of radiopaque markers. One is the Scintigraphy marker, which has 24 markers. The other one is Colonic, which is a Korean-based system which has 20 markers. However, most studies, they use Scintigraphy. There are a few methodologies in using Scintigraphy. The first one is a single capsule system where the patient ingests the markers in a single capsule on a specific day, and then they perform an abdominal X-ray until all the markers are defecated. In fact, it's quite time-consuming and there's more radiation. However, the other way is they ingest a marker and they do a single abdominal X-ray on day 5. And then from there, we assess the amount of markers retained in the colon. So as long as there are more than 80% of the markers has been passed out by day 5, it's normal. However, if as more than 5 markers are retained, then we need to look at the pattern of distribution. If it's retained diffusely in the colon, this is known as colonic hypomotility or slow transit constipation. If it's accumulated at the rectosigmoid, then it's called dyssynergia. One of the recommendation by the Scintigraphy product itself, it says that if there are more than 5 retained at day 5, the next step can be considered, whereby give a trial of bulking agent daily for 1 to 2 weeks, and then swallow another capsule at the end of the bulking agent, and then we repeat an abdominal X-ray 5 days after the ingestion. And then from there, we reassess back the distribution of the markers, whereby if it's more than 80% passed out, it's normal. The other one is the Metcalfe protocol, whereby there are 2 options also, where the patient swallows 1 capsule per day for 3 days. And each capsule has 24 radiopaque markers. And there are 3 different shapes in these markers, where day 1, it's an O-shaped marker. Day 2 is a double D-shaped marker. And day 3 is a tri-chamber marker. So patient will ingest the capsule at day 1, day 2, and day 3 under direct supervision. And during this time, they are not supposed to take laxatives, no enemas, no suppositories. And we repeat an abdominal X-ray at day 4 and day 7. So the total number of markers in each segment can be used to determine the transit time, regardless of whether it's O or double D or tri-chamber. So if on day 4, where if there are more than 50 markers retained, then it's an abnormal transit time. So we will need to repeat an abdominal X-ray at day 7. So the findings are abnormal if the total colonic transit time is more than 70 hours, or the transit time in any segment in particular is more than 30 hours. So the total markers retained in each segment is equivalent to the transit time in hours. For example, if there are 10 markers, it means that the transit time is 10 hours. However, if we are using the Colonic, then we need to times 1.2. So you can use this table. For example, on day 4, how many markers are retained in the colon, and day 7, how many markers are retained. So from there, we get the total amount of markers, and the total markers is equivalent to the total colonic transit time. This is a way to divide the colon into segments. We use the L5 as a point of interest. We draw a perpendicular line along the spine superiorly, and then we draw a line from L5 to along the pelvic brim downwards, the right pelvic brim downwards, and we draw another line from L5 towards the left anterior superior iliac spine. And from there, we can divide the column into right, left, and rectosigmoid. So based on these divisions, we can calculate the total number of pellets that are retained in the colon. So this is an example of a patient who has retention of markers mainly over the left and the rectosigmoid. With regards to colonic transit time, there are many variables that can affect the colonic transit time. This is in fact a Korean paper. They say that even in Korea itself, the total colonic transit time varies. However, on average, it's between 20 to 30 hours. However, Western data shows the mean colonic transit time is about 30 to 40 hours. The upper limit normal is 70 hours. I don't think we have a local data in our country. However, it's mentioned that Asians tend to have a shorter colonic transit. With regards to the Korean data, the mean CTT is about 20 to 30 hours. The Chinese data, in fact, mentions 21 hours in men, 28 hours in women. The differences are mainly due to age, gender, race, diet, even the kind of microbiome also will affect the CTT. Women tend to have a longer CTT compared to men. In fact, menstrual cycle can also influence the CTT. The other modality is by using the nuclear medicine technology, whereby it's called a scintigraphy. The advantage is, in fact, lesser amount of radiation compared to using the markers. It's a reliable alternative. It's reproducible and accurate. It measures the whole gut and also regional colonic transit. However, the cons would be much more longer duration and not practical for many nuclear medicine departments, mainly because of resources. So the concept is the patient ingests the radioactive isotopes, and then the progression through the GI tract is tracked with a gamma camera. Usually we use the long half-life isotopes, for example, 111 indium. So with regards to 111 indium, there are two types of radiopharmaceutical. The first one would be a 111 indium DTPA, whereby this is consumed in a standard solid liquid meal. The other one is 111 indium in an activated charcoal slurry contained within a pH-sensitive polymer-based capsule. This one is specifically designed so that it will only break down in the TI environment, and then it will release the isotopes in the TI onwards. The other short half-life isotope is technetium. We can add that into our study to measure the gastric and also small bowel transit. And then the image of the colon is taken at 24 and 48 hours to identify the pattern of transit. So this is just a brief diagram to show the gamma camera, and then we take the images based on the radiation emitted from the isotopes. So there are few, in fact, reporting modes with regards to scintigraphy. And firstly is the transit time in hours. The other one are the percentage of radioactivity retained, and also the proximal colonic emptying or center of mass. There are two endpoints, in fact. Overall colonic transit, which is expressed as geometric center, and also emptying of the ascending colon. So the colon, in fact, is divided into 5 or 7 regions of interest. The 5 regions of interest are mainly as ascending colon, transverse, descending, rectosigmoid, and also expel2. Geometric center, in fact, is a mode of calculation based on the amount of isotopes distribution in the colon. High GC indicates fast colonic transit because the center of the activity has moved to the left. Low GC indicates slow colonic transit because the center of the activity is more on the proximal colon. So this is how they divide the colon into segments for study, and that's how a image of the radioisotope emitting the radiation that can be picked up by the gamma camera. So for example, over here, it's the normal distribution. Over here will be generalized slow colonic transit. And over here, it's functional obstruction. And over here will be a colonic inertia. So they take the images at 24, 48, and 72 hours. So this one is how a normal distribution would look like. This one is a delayed distribution where the GC is low, so it's focused on the left side and on the right side. The other modality would be the wireless motility capsule, also known as smart capsule. However, in fact, there are some that mention that the evidence is not really strong for CTT. The advantage is it's quite well tolerated, does not require radiation. However, it's quite expensive and needs training for interpretation. There's also a 3% risk of the capsule failing. So the concept is it has a data receiver which the patient carries, and it has 3 main sensors where it detects pH, temperature, and also pressure. So all these data will be transmitted to the receiver. So the measurement range, in fact, for pH ranges from 0.05 to 9. The pressure is from 0 to 350 millimeters mercury. Temperature detection rate is from 25 to 49 degrees Celsius. So the whole gut transit, in fact, is an interval between the point from capsule ingestion to the point where it leaves the body. So the capsule exit time is a point where there's loss of signal or sudden abrupt drop in temperature. With regards to capsule gastric emptying time, it is the duration of the time from the point of ingestion to the point the capsule leaves the pylorus. And this one is in fact detected by a sudden abrupt change in pH by more than 2 unit increment from the lowest postprandial value to at least 4, and it is sustaining and doesn't decrease to below 4 for more than 10 minutes. Small bowel transit time is the interval between the capsule entry into the small bowel and its entry into the cecum. So sickle entry is defined as a distinct drop of more than 1 unit pH and sustained for more than 10 minutes and occurs at least 30 minutes after the capsule enters the small bowel. So the delayed gastric emptying is when it takes more than 5 hours for the capsule to leave the stomach. Delayed small intestinal transit is when it takes more than 6 hours, and delayed colonic transit is when it takes more than 59 hours. This is an example of how the data looks like, and from there we need to analyze and determine the timing for each segment transit. MRI also can be used to assess colonic transit. However, here we use capsule markers filled with water or contrast agent such as gadolinium. A MRI doesn't image the outline of the capsule directly, but it just creates a filling structure of the colon. And in fact, measurements taken tend to show quite good correlation with CTT from other methods. So this is how a MRI colonic transit looks like. The advantage is MRI can also visualize the anatomy of the surrounding structures. It can also assess the motility, can also assess colonic volume, gas content, can also look at colonic wall thickness. However, there are many limitations, and there's the data in this modality is quite limited. So we need more evidence and further validation. All right, I think that's all for today. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Naveen. Very good coverage of various type of measurement using the